All right, welcome to NFL Nexus. You know, in the NFL, every single team is chasing that same dream, a Super Bowl ring. Now, for the teams at the bottom, yeah, the path is all about rebuilding. But what about a team that's already good? A team that's right there on the edge of greatness? Well, that's when the questions get way more complicated and the stakes get astronomically higher. How do you make that final, critical leap from being just a contender to being a champion? Today, we're diving deep into that exact problem, focusing on a huge off-season crossroads for one of the NFC's top teams. It's a single decision that pits a league-altering trade against a patient foundational draft pick.
Okay, so let's set the stage. The Chicago Bears are coming off a really good 11-6 season. They fought their way to the top of a tough NFC North, they won the division. I mean, everything seems to be pointing in the right direction. But, as any real football fan knows, in this league, if you're standing still, you're actually moving backward. The goal isn't just to make the playoffs, right? It's to hoist that Lombardi trophy. And to get there, a front office, man, they have to be brutally honest with themselves, find the weaknesses, and just attack them. For these Bears, even with all their success, there's one area that could put a ceiling on their championship hopes. And the answer is right where games are won and lost. In the trenches. On that defensive line.
So here's how we're going to break this whole thing down. First, we'll get into exactly what's holding Chicago's defense back. Then, we'll look at two totally different solutions. Path 1 is the Maxx Crosby gamble. We're talking a high-stakes, all-in move for a proven superstar. Path 2, that's the Caleb Banks blueprint, the more traditional, build-for-the-future draft approach. We're going to put them head-to-head, trade versus draft, and then finally, we'll try to get inside the head of GM Ryan Poles as he faces this massive decision.
All right, so let's start with the problem itself. When you look at this Bears roster, you see top-tier talent all over the place. I mean, they've built a team that can go toe-to-toe with anyone in the league on any given Sunday. But the truly elite, the championship teams, they've got an extra gear. And for Chicago's defense, which is already pretty solid, unlocking that final level of dominance is all about finding one very specific and very powerful missing piece.
This number right here tells the whole story. 35. That's how many sacks the Chicago Bears had all of last season. And look, for a team that won its division, that number is kind of low. It puts them squarely in the bottom half of all playoff teams in that category. It's not a total catastrophe, but it is a flashing red light on the dashboard that points to a clear weakness. To be a truly elite championship defense, the kind that can just take over a game in the playoffs, you have to get after the quarterback consistently. 35 sacks? That's a huge sign they just weren't doing it nearly enough, and that puts a ton of pressure on your secondary to cover guys forever. And this really gets to the why behind that number 35. The Bears have a legitimate stud in Montez Sweat. The guy's a monster, a phenomenal pass rusher who demands attention. But that was the issue. He demanded all the attention. Offensive coordinators aren't stupid. They saw Sweat was the one guy they had to stop, and they threw everything at him. We're talking double teams, chip blocks from running backs, sliding the entire offensive line his way. And the second they did that, poof, the rest of the Bears' pass rusher just vanished. There was no consistent number 2 threat to make offenses pay for it, which made the whole defense predictable and, in those big moments, really vulnerable.
So, how do you solve that one-man army problem? Well, one very direct approach is to go out and get another certified, battle-tested superstar to put on the other side. And that brings us right to path number 1, the Maxx Crosby gamble. This isn't about hoping a rookie pans out. This is about going out and trading for a known, dominant, top 5 player at his position, a move that would shake up the whole league. Man, the story around Maxx Crosby this offseason was pure NFL drama. It started late last season when he quietly asked for a trade out of Vegas and also had surgery on his meniscus. Then, fast forward to March 6th and a bombshell drops. The Raiders have a deal to send him to the Baltimore Ravens. It's basically done, but not so fast. Just 5 days later, on March 11th, the Ravens shockingly pull out. The reports say he failed his physical. All of a sudden, one of the best defensive players in the game is just stuck in limbo. And that chaos created this unexpected window. And by March 14th, the rumor mill was on fire, with all these conflicting reports about whether the Bears, a team with a huge need, could even get in on the action. So, here's the thing. This whole debate really comes down to money. And when Adam Schefter, probably the most plugged-in guy in the entire sport, says something, people listen. And his take on this was just blunt. He came out and said flatly, the Bears just don't have the cash to pull this off. He pretty much called it a fantasy. And for a lot of people, that was it. Case closed. If Schefter says it's impossible, it's probably impossible. It painted this picture of a really stark financial reality.
But just as that door seemed to slam shut, a completely different story starts coming from a trusted local guy. David Kaplan, who's a really respected voice for ESPN 1000 in Chicago, came out with a totally opposite take. He said his sources told him that Schefter was just looking at the public numbers and that behind the scenes, ownership basically gave GM Ryan Poles a blank check. Kaplan insisted that if Poles really wanted to make the move, the money would magically appear. And this sets up that classic insider battle, right? The national guy versus the local guy. It just created this fog of war where nobody really knew what to believe.
To ground this whole thing in some cold, hard facts, let's just look at the data. This number comes from Over the Cap, which is one of the most trusted sites for this stuff. At that exact moment, the Chicago Bears had just $1.4 million in available cap space. Now, think about this. Maxx Crosby's contract has a cap hit of almost $35.5 million a year. So you can see why Schefter's report had so much weight. I mean, on paper, the math just doesn't work. It seems impossible. Making this trade wouldn't just be hard. It would take some serious salary cap gymnastics, moving money around, restructuring deals, maybe even cutting guys.
So what about the man in the middle of it all, Bears GM Ryan Poles? Well, his public statement was a total masterclass in saying something without saying anything. He confirms they were interested, we checked into it, had some dialogue, so you know they did their homework. But then he immediately taps the brakes, saying they looked to see if it made sense, before just shutting it all down with, "I'll just leave it at that." He's not saying no, but he is definitely not saying yes. It's a super cautious statement, you know? It's designed to acknowledge the rumor without committing to anything, and it keeps all of his options wide open.
Okay, so now let's pivot to that other fork in the road. If the Crosby trade is the high-risk, all-in, win-now splash, then this second option is the complete philosophical opposite. It's the more traditional, more patient, and you could argue more sustainable way to build a team. You lay your foundation brick by brick through the NFL draft. This is what we're calling the Caleb Banks blueprint.
Now, before we get to the player himself, let's do a quick sidebar on mock drafts. For anybody who doesn't follow the draft process like a hawk, it's basically just a big prediction game. Analysts study team needs, player talent, what GMs tend to do, and they try to project who's going to get picked where. Now, they're almost never 100% right, but they are a fantastic tool for exploring all the possibilities and framing these kinds of team-building debates. So, according to a big mock draft from The Athletic, which is one of the most respected names in sports journalism, they're predicting the Bears will use their first-round pick, number 25 overall, on a defensive tackle named Caleb Banks. This potential pick represents a completely different way of thinking. Instead of trading away your future draft picks for a star who's already in his prime, you're using your own pick to get a young, high-potential player who you can develop and control financially for the next 4 to 5 years. Banks is the long-term play.
When you look closer at Banks, you can see exactly why he's seen as such a great fit for what the Bears are building. Let's run through these points. First, he fills that exact need we talked about, an interior disruptor. He's a guy who can just wreck the pocket from the inside so quarterbacks can't step up, and it makes it impossible for offenses to just focus everything on Montez Sweat. Second, his skill set is considered a perfect match for Dennis Allen's aggressive defensive scheme. Third, this pick fits perfectly with GM Ryan Poles' whole philosophy of building teams from the inside out, in the trenches. And maybe the biggest point of all, Banks would come in on a cost-controlled rookie deal, which is huge financial value compared to Crosby's massive salary. That lets you spend money elsewhere. And finally, it keeps your core young, hungry, and growing together on the same schedule.
Okay, so now we have our two very different paths laid out. You've got the blockbuster trade for the proven, game-wrecking superstar on one hand, and the first-round pick on a promising rookie on the other. So let's put them side by side for a real head-to-head breakdown. This is the exact math the front office is wrestling with right now.
This slide just lays the whole choice out perfectly. Let's go through it. First up, immediate impact. With Maxx Crosby, there's zero guesswork. You're getting a proven all-pro, a true game wrecker from the second he walks in the door. He instantly makes your whole defense elite. With Caleb Banks, you're drafting potential. High-end potential, sure, but he's still a rookie. There's going to be a learning curve. Now, financial cost. The difference is just staggering. Crosby costs you that massive $35.5 million salary, plus the high draft picks you have to give up to get him. Banks comes in on a cheap, slotted rookie contract. It's not even comparable. Next, long-term control. Crosby is locked into that huge veteran deal, which could really tie your hands when you have to re-sign your other young stars down the road. Banks gives you 4, maybe 5 years of cheap team control. That's one of the most valuable things in the entire NFL. And finally, associated risk. Both paths have a ton of risk, just different kinds. With Crosby, the risk is that giant contract and, of course, that failed physical with his knee. With Banks, it's the normal risk you have with any draft pick. What if he never develops? What if he's a bust?
So after weighing all of this, all these complex factors, the immense pressure of this decision lands right on the shoulders of one guy. What is General Manager Ryan Poles going to do? I mean, this single choice isn't just going to define the Bears' defense for next season. It is absolutely going to dictate the entire trajectory of their championship window for the next several years.
These are the exact questions that have to be keeping Ryan Poles up at night. First, how wide open is that win-now window, really? Does he believe this roster is truly just one superstar away from a Super Bowl, which would justify that insane cost for Crosby? Second, what about long-term cap health? Is it smart to mortgage the future, both with picks and money, or is it better to stay flexible? Third, it's about his core philosophy. Does he stick to the draft and develop plan that got him here, or does he break from his own rules for a special opportunity? And at the end of the day, it comes down to risk. Which gamble are you more comfortable with? An expensive player with a medical red flag, or a young player who might just never pan out? There is no easy answer here.
And that brings us to the final question, the one we're going to throw to you. After seeing all the evidence, the timeline, the conflicting reports, the whole strategic breakdown, if you were sitting in the GM's chair with the fate of the franchise in your hands, what call would you make? Do you push all the chips in for the proven superstar in Maxx Crosby, believing he's that final piece of the puzzle? Or do you play the long game, stick to the blueprint, and build through the draft with a guy like Caleb Banks?
Seriously, we really want to know what you think. Go on down to the comments and make your case. Are you Team Crosby or are you Team Banks? And hey, if you enjoy these deep dives into NFL strategy, do us a huge favor and subscribe to NFL Nexus and give this explainer a like. It really helps us grow the channel, and it makes sure you won't miss our next breakdown.
And hey, just one last thing before you go. If you're looking for another way to support the channel, we've actually created a line of football-themed coloring books. They're perfect for fans of any age, for your kids, grandkids, or honestly, even for adults who just want to unwind. You can scan the QR code on your screen right now, or you can find the link down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on NFL Nexus.